Today I have an important task. I need to fix a computer. It's right here. This has been sent over by my mother-in-law. It won't turn on. So I'm going to take you guys through the troubleshooting process.
Excellent!
Find the perfect balance between speed, value, and ease of use with a Lexar NM610 series NVMe solid-state drive. The M.2 form factor allows for easy installation in compatible motherboards and laptops, and a PCIe 3.0x4 connection with NVMe 1.3 technology allows for sequential read speeds up to 2100 megabytes per second and write speeds up to 1600 megabytes per second. It's available in 250, 500 gig, and 1 terabyte capacities, so if you want faster load times and transfer speeds with a Lexar NM610 SSD, click the sponsor link in the video description. Hero is here to supervise, and if you guys, like me, build your own computers and word gets out about that, then you probably have some friends or family members who refer to you as their technical support. And I'm totally okay with that, but you might have different situations when it comes to tech support with a PC. This particular one is a Tower PC. It's got an ASA case. It's a CyberPower pre-built. And I've worked with this system before because it's a CyberPower system and they often cheap out on the power supplies for the less expensive systems that they put together. Granted, this is a little bit older and everything, but I do know it's got a good power supply. It's got a Kingwin Laser Platinum in there. More to the point though, when you're troubleshooting a system like this, there's probably 3 different things that you might have to worry about. One is that it's going to be a software issue, in which case my go-to is to back up everything that's on the system, then do a full reformat of the main operating system drive and reinstall Windows. Doing that will almost invariably solve any software issues you might have, but the second problem is that there might be a hardware issue going on here. We might actually have a piece of hardware that failed. And since this system is using older hardware, it's an old AM3 motherboard, an AMD-based system. It has integrated graphics on the motherboard, not on the CPU. It's old enough to back when they did that. But if we do have a component that's failed, then we're going to need to swap in some new hardware. And I will point out that I'm in a sort of unique situation because I have a bunch of hardware in my garage. So I might choose to either upgrade the system or replace a bunch of stuff because I have parts that I know will work, even though it might not be the best price to performance option or anything like that. And then of course there's I guess a third option, which is that the PC is just a loss. It's not working in any way, shape, or form, or it's old enough or has enough parts that just aren't working that I decide to scrap a bunch of things and essentially do a rebuild from the ground up using whatever parts I can salvage from this. Because again, we're starting off with very limited information, just that the system won't turn on. My main goals are going to be to see if it really does turn on or not. Second is going to be to get at the hard drive that's installed here and see if I need to do any backups there. And then third is going to be how to move forward with the hardware. So other than the system itself, I have a laptop so I can download stuff if I need to, or back up things or look up things. I have an external drive, which is just a SATA SSD with a USB adapter, and that's nice and fast for if I need to copy stuff off of there. This is blank right now because if there is the chance of there being a virus, I do need to be concerned that anything I might plug in via USB, depending on the status of the virus, could potentially compromise an external device. So that's something that we will hopefully figure out once we get the system up. Other than that, basic setup here, keyboard, mouse, monitor, and some screwdrivers for taking stuff apart. Encountered my first setback here, just plugging stuff in for the I/O and whatnot and getting power, and I realized this has integrated graphics, but the only video out is an analog D-sub connector. Fortunately though, I'm connecting to this AOC Agon monitor, which is a 240 hertz monitor that I already did a little bit of coverage on. And hey, look at that. Way to go, AOC. They included an actual D-sub input there. So all I needed was to dig into my cable drawer and yet again fish out a D-sub VGA cable. These are the types of things where it's like, you're like, oh, I don't need this anymore. I'm just gonna get rid of them or recycle them. And I'm always like, no, I gotta keep one on hand. And it always ends up buried at the back of the drawer. But fortunately, I still have one. So sturdy. And I don't know if you love them or hate them, but I do kind of miss having these little screw-in parts here. Although whenever you screw them in all the way, that means you're gonna need to unplug that soon. Looks like it's powering on to me. Have I been lied to? We had a post beep even. Look at that, got a motherboard splash. Starting Windows.
Hannah? What? You talk to Lola. Okay, old and slow and sometimes does not turn on.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, mommy.
All right, so we've had our lead tech, Hannah, do a quick phone call with the client, and we've discovered it's actually old and slow, apparently is the main issue with this computer. It doesn't turn on sometimes, although of course, as is often the case, the not turning on problem when brought here to be fixed isn't appearing to be a problem. So with that said, and this being a very old system at this point, I am going to do a core system upgrade, new motherboard, new memory, new CPU. I've got those parts in the garage, so I'll get to those in a second. First, I need to make sure everything's backed up off of this. And fortunately, since the system is booting up okay, I do have the means to do that. I think I'm gonna be limited by the fact that this motherboard has USB 2.0 at the fastest, and I think there might even be some USB 1 or 1.1 ports on the board. So that might limit the transfer speed, but I'm gonna pull everything off of the desktop. You can see it's pretty cluttered right there. Then I'm gonna go into my documents, and there's pictures and some other personal files in there that I can back up. According to my mother-in-law, that should be everything that's important that's stored on here. And then we can do a core upgrade and get a much faster, more responsive system. But once all that stuff is saved externally, then we can get rid of most of the hardware here. I think I'm pretty much gonna do new everything, so I'm not really gonna be doing a rehab of this system in particular, but I will be saving that power supply. It is a platinum rated power supply that I swapped in I don't know how many years ago. And if I'm lucky, I think I might even still have the modular cables for that power supply out in the garage here. So I will quickly go through all the backup stuff, and then we'll come back with the hardware upgrades. I am jumping ahead quite some time and skipping over the backing up process because it actually took quite a while, and I think I've determined what the issue is with the system for the most part, and it has to do with this 500 gig hard drive that the operating system is based on and everything else. It's a Hitachi drive from August 2010, and as I was trying to copy stuff off of it onto this external USB, I was getting speeds of maybe 50 to 60 megabytes per second, but that was getting slower and slower over time, and I couldn't figure out exactly what was going wrong. I thought the USB connection might be an issue because I think this system does have USB 1 on it, or 1.1, so I disconnected this and plugged it directly in via SATA, and even with the older revisions of SATA, I should be able to get reasonably good speeds. But there ended up being about 200-ish gigs worth of stuff that needed to be saved off of this, and in particular, larger files seemed to be going slower. I then decided to take this system out of the mix, and I just pulled this drive out completely and went and plugged it into Riptide via my external USB hard drive toaster, and I found that it was pretty much having the same behavior over there. Now, the only nice thing was that smaller files were still transferring pretty fast. It was mainly the big stuff like videos that were taking a longer amount of time. So that did allow me to get most of the core stuff that I would back up from any system that I was trying to back up off of it, which is all the stuff in my documents, personal files, pictures, and some music. This did mean that larger files, like there were some downloaded movies and stuff like that, I was not able to transfer, so this drive is going to stick around for a while, and we still have access to it if there is anything on there that we still need to go and pull off. I would usually focus on stuff that was on the desktop, and then in my documents, my videos and everything like that. I didn't want to have to go digging too far into like personal stuff and everything on there, but I'm pretty confident now that the stuff that we need off of this drive is copied. I'm actually going to pop it back into the system real quick and boot up one more time because I realized I never actually checked like what CPU we're running currently and everything. But if I was at this point with most people, what I would do next is I would decide to ditch this drive because of the slow speeds, and then I would pop in an SSD. And if I was doing that and I was trying to get this system up and running for a parent or a grandparent or somebody who is only going to really be doing web browsing and answering emails and maybe watching some videos and listening to music, we don't really need much more than what this system already has. Dropping in an SSD and going with a fresh install of Windows would be a night and day difference in this, and I think it would make it very usable yet again. However, I have lots of hardware that I'm always looking for good homes for, so we're going to be doing a core system upgrade. Not just the case, which we're going to be swapping out to this Thermaltake Versa H18, but we're going to be going with a modern AM4 platform, albeit a slightly older motherboard, the AB350M Pro 4 from ASRock. And since we need something that has both a CPU and video in it, I dug up the Athlon 3000G, which is just a dual core. This is an inexpensive processor, which you can, I think, still find for 55 or 60 bucks. But again, for what the system is used for, we don't really need very much more than this, and the integrated graphics means that I don't need to add a discrete graphics card. We are going with an SSD solution now. This is just a 240 gig Seagate unit that I don't think they even make anymore, but it's a solid drive. Then I'm going to add a 640 gig WD black mechanical drive for backup of stuff on there. This will be a faster drive than the one they are currently from, although this is supposedly a 7200 RPM drive. Definitely not behaving like one, though. The WD black drives are really, really good long-term use. We got a Race Stealth cooler for the 3000G. We have a 16 gig kit of memory. I was going to go with an 8 gig kit, but I just had the 16 gig kit, so we're going to use that. And since I'm not positive if this motherboard needs a BIOS update to accept the Athlon 3000G, I've got a R7 1700 there, so we can double check before it's installed and make sure that it will be compatible with this processor. This still has part of a system in it that I need to pull out, and then the only piece we're going to be carrying over from the old system is going to be our Kingwin Laser Platinum power supply, because you should never skimp on the power supply. So I got to pull that out of there, and then I think the system we're just going to keep as is otherwise, in case we really do get in a situation where there's something that was desperately needed off of it that didn't get backed up. I can still plug a power supply into it and boot it back up and see if there's anything else we need to dig out. So that's the plan, and now I get to move on to the next part, the fun part, working with hardware. Let's go. So upon reinstalling that hard drive, it threw a smart error. So I'm definitely glad we were able to back stuff up off of it. But other than that, when I rebooted the system, I was able to double check. It's an AMD Athlon 2 X2 255 CPU in there, which is a dual core, runs at 3.1 gigahertz. It's got 4 gigs of DDR3 RAM installed. So that is a 10-year-old CPU. It launched in 2010. So we're going with a 10-year newer CPU-ish. We're also going with much newer CPU architecture. And our dual core 3000G does have 4 threads. It does have SMT, so that's nice. Beyond that though, I have an outside of the box build set up out here so I can get a quick test going, because I don't recall the last time I used this motherboard, but there's a chance it's updated and that the 3000G might just be recognized and work. We'll see. All right, we got nothing, so I think I need to swap in different CPUs so we can update the BIOS to recognize this CPU. Yay. Let's see if we can do this quickly. Swap one, go. And we're updated. Okay, we've got the Ryzen 1700 in there, which is a first gen, which I know this board will support no matter what the BIOS is. Added a discrete graphics card because there's no integrated GPU on that chip, so we needed something for video out. Switched over to DisplayPort as well for that. Checking in on the ASRock website, we can see that we do have support for the Athlon 3000G, and that is as of BIOS version P6.30. Oh god, look at all the warning messages. So the latest version here actually is from within the past month, 8.13, and that's version 6.6. But to get to any version above 3.4, we need a bridge BIOS version 3.4. So we're going to need to upgrade to 3.4 first, and then we can go from there to I'll just go to 6.6 for the support for the 3000G. USB with both BIOSes is plugged in, and now the moment of truth yet again. Cool. Hey, look at that, we're into the BIOS. We have on-screen, wait, oh man. All right, so we're already at 5.9. So that means we're actually closer to being compatible than I thought. We don't need to do the 3.4 update. We can just update straight to 6.6 or whatever I got. Instant flash. 6.6. And in case anyone was wondering, this is why I often recommend motherboards that have a update BIOS function without having a CPU or memory installed, like a BIOS Flashback Plus or USB BIOS Flashback or whatever Asus or MSI or Gigabyte calls it. In this situation, I still would have needed to update the BIOS in order to recognize the new CPU, but I wouldn't have had to swap in the old processor in order to do that, so it would have saved me a step. And snap, we're back. Okay, cool. Don't need the GPU anymore because the 3000G is installed once again. We've removed the 1700. Did I mention it will be convenient for Lola since she's using the same monitor that this motherboard has an analog VGA out? So okay, can we get this system to boot with the CPU that we want to use? Moment of truth one more time. Come on. Ooh, what was that? Did something. Don't you tease me. Don't you tease me. There it is, hooray. Okay, so I suspected that the VGA for some reason might be causing issues just with video signal, so swapped to trusty HDMI, and that's working. So we have our updated BIOS and our 3000G recognized. One last thing to do here. And that's load our XMP profile. Beautiful. All right, and with that, I think we have the system working hardware-wise. Now, we get to take all this stuff and put it in here. So I'm happy to say now that we can ditch this old system. It held up for a while, but it is now being supplanted by this one. This is a little bit smaller since it's micro ATX, and it's got better airflow. It's running a lot quieter, I can tell already out of the gate. This little computer, meanwhile, though, has been getting Windows installed, running Windows updates, and doing a little bit of the file transfers that I needed to do. That 640 gig WD black drive actually had some stuff on it that I needed to copy off, and then I did a full format on that. Also did some initial setup stuff for the computer, like downloading Firefox and replacing Edge. I got Firefox and Chrome installed, but I'm going to recommend that they use Firefox primarily, and I installed uBlock Origin on Firefox as well, just to provide a little bit more protection from malicious ads. I have run Windows Update a couple times already, running it again, because you should run it until it's done updating, so I think we might have just one or two more things to add. And I am connected wirelessly via this external USB Wi-Fi card. Also was checking that these front ports are working. Some benefits to this PC over the old one are going to be more front USB ports, but an actual USB 3.0 one, as well as a couple USB 2.0s. There is not integrated Wi-Fi on this motherboard, but they have a wired Ethernet connection, and it's got an Ethernet gigabit jack for that, so we'll be using that. And look, other nice like modern day upgrades, like a USB Type-C port on the back too, along with their USB 3.0 options. So as I already kind of mentioned, I didn't really need to swap most of the parts of this system to do an upgrade, because we could have done an SSD transfer and a clean install of Windows on the old system, and then it would have been much more usable overall. That said, upgrading to this does provide some benefits, and since I had the hardware already, it made sense. It's even a B350 motherboard, so if Lola wants to try some overclocking, well, she can. All right, thank goodness Windows 10 is now up to date. And at this point, I'm just going to take the backup folder where I separated stuff like the downloads folder and favorites and music and pictures and stuff, and transfer them to those appropriate folders here on the new system. There are a lot of pictures on this system, but we can already see our transfer speeds jumping up. Well, this is going to depend on the file size of what's being transferred, but when it's transferring larger size files, we're jumping up to, oh wow, well over 100 megabytes per second. That's really nice. Now granted, I'm comparing this to a mechanical hard drive that was also dying, so it's not really a fair comparison, but the main point being here, Lola PC was slow, Lola PC is now fast. So the system is pretty much set up. I have a few more things to copy, but I just wanted to do a real world test, and I'm not doing an A/B comparison like I did with the old system, but just the old system was really slow. So how long does it take this system to boot up? Let's do a countdown. I just hit the power button. There it is. That wasn't too bad. I should have had a stopwatch going or something, but I feel like that was around 20 seconds. Not bad at all. Let's try a simple task like loading a browser. There it is. Okay, browser is loaded. Let's go to YouTube. Beautiful, not too bad at all. So apart from the dangers of having a failing hard drive and that just crapping out completely and losing data and stuff like that, we have upgraded from that, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. We have a much more reliable long-term storage drive in there in the WD Black. We're booting off of an SSD now instead of a mechanical hard drive, and that speeds things up across the board, especially basic stuff like loading applications. And I think ultimately we have a system that is usable now, that you don't have to sit and wait for 30 seconds to 2 minutes depending on how the hard drive installed is behaving. Combine that with all the sort of ease of use and other benefits that you get from going with a more current gen solution, especially if you're going to plug in something like a USB 3.0 drive. And I'd say we've done a pretty nice upgrade job for Lola, and I think she's going to get a lot more use out of this PC as well as everyone over there at their house. But I think that's going to wrap it up for this video, you guys. We're going to get this system transferred back over to Lola so she can start using it. If you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button, and while you're at it, check out the description down below. I'll put some relevant links down there, as well as a link to my store where you can buy shirts, mugs, pint glasses, real high quality stuff like the shirt I'm wearing today. There's a few more awesome hardware items still available on the site, so check it out at paulshardware.net. Thank you very much once again for watching, you guys. We'll see you in the next one.